Hey, what is going on everybody? It is Nolan, or the Optimistic Gamer here, and welcome back to the Optimistic Survival Series. Just as we talked about at the start of last episode, today we are doing the other thing on that two-part checklist. Of course, part 1, and they are completely unrelated, but part 1 was renovating that trial chamber. Today, part 2 is carving out the river, something that is going to make this world feel entirely different. I'm very excited about this. Of course, once we built the lake, it really changed the landscape. We haven't done much building around here though, and I would like to do a little bit more in the future, but I digress. Today, we are working on the river. So this is something that we have been talking about really since episode 50. Around that, when we did all of our planning. We have our weaponsmith right here, but across the street we are building a hydro plant. So we will have the source of this river flow from our lake through the hydro plant, which may be a building or perhaps just a small dam, and then it will flow in this direction all the way to the ocean. Now we're gonna have to do a little bit of calculations because, as you know, rivers don't flow up. It just doesn't work like that. You can't have a river that flows up. It will only flow down or level off. Now, of course, one option would technically be flood this whole area right here and turn this into a second lake, but I don't really want a second lake. I don't think the valley needs a second lake. What it needs is some moving water. So while certain parts of this river may be wider than other parts, generally speaking, it will just look like a sort of mountainous river. So there are going to be some steeper parts, but for the most part, I actually want to keep this relatively shallow, primarily because of the water mechanics in Minecraft. We don't get a gradual slope with water. Well, we technically do if we do it correctly. If we put a bucket right here, it would gradually flow down, but every time we step down a block, we are not going to get that perfect flow. It's going to look a little odd. So the more we can keep it relatively flat, the better it will look. So that is actually going to mean filling in most of this land right in here, probably to about this level. I do want to go with solid dirt for this, not because we have a ton. In fact, we may have to go source some from somewhere else, but because I just want this to be solid ground. I don't want this to be hollow underneath. There's not really a reason for that other than my OCD in the game, but I do want to get all of that filled in. This will allow us to have a gradually flowing river from our lake to roughly this point before we have to start really terraforming and carving out those canyons where the river will flow. Once we get over to this point, and we will fly up here to the top of this hillside so we can get a really good vantage point. Once we get to about right here, that's when we will start to carve out a canyon. We may follow along this ridge right here. It's sort of already cut out for us. We just have to do the other side, but eventually the river will end up right over here. Now, obviously, this hill is going to create lots of issues. We may opt for a tunnel though, but we will see when we get here. That will be towards the end of the episode, and finally it will finish off with a nice big, hopefully that doesn't cause issues for us. We will finish this off with a nice big waterfall that goes all the way down to the ocean where the river will end. So it's going to give us a really nice connection between our valley and our boathouse way out here, and it will also serve as a guide for future buildings. Of course, in any major urban development, they often start because of a source of water. Obviously, we didn't have a source of water when we built the valley, but we do now artificially, and we are going to make it look even more natural because I think the lake looks pretty natural in here. We could assume it was some kind of great flood or something that filled up that basin. Nonetheless though, we are going to grab out our shovel. We're going to need a lot of dirt, a lot of shulker boxes for all of the dirt that we remove, and then we will start marking out where we want this river to be and finally carve it out and fill it up. So I'm gonna go get all of those things ready, and I will meet you right back here. Okay, this might be an issue for us. I have in my inventory all of the dirt that we have total, so we may have to go find some, but I think we will do a quick change in plans and just do the top level of that. I will go back at some point and fill all of the rest of it in, but for now I just want to get this top layer of dirt on. Even with what we have, it still won't be anywhere close to enough dirt to fill all of this in, but we will get as far as we can. So I think we will go from about right here. I think this would be a nice level for us, and we are just going to do one single straight line all the way across and sort of make a plus shape so we can get a sense on all four sides of where exactly the new ground level is going to be. So that was one stack right there, and we have about 10 more stacks, so we could do 10 more rows if we did 5 more on either side, just right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Just filling in these 10 rows from this side to that side would use up all of the dirt that we have. So yeah, we are definitely going to need a few shulker boxes just for filling in this top level. And don't worry, I will get some torches put down underneath here so we don't have any hostile mobs spawning in. Alright, so we have this plus shape now. If we fly up here, we can get a good look at that, of where exactly the ground will fill in and how much we are going to cover up. I know it's a little bit vague over here on this side, since we don't really have any dirt over here, but it's going to give us a pretty good flat area, great for building, and of course great for a nice gradual river. Now the river can be flat in some places. It's not going to constantly slope down. In fact, if you look at any of the world's larger rivers, none of them actually look like they are sloping. They are very, very gradual as they flow, and they just slowly make their way to the ocean. And that's sort of what our river will be until it gets to the end. That's when it will get very steep and rocky, and you get some of those rapids. Of course, the game doesn't have those, but we can pretend that they are there. Ideally though, we should be able to get in a boat at the lake and reach the river via boat without having any issues. Now, getting back, well, we all know we can't go up a waterfall or anything like that, so we won't be able to boat back up. We'll have to walk or fly, take the long way, but getting to the ocean, we will be able to do that via boat. So I'm just kind of building all of these small sections. It's a little easier to do it bit by bit instead of just filling in one giant row at a time, at least in my opinion. I think it's easier when you have a bunch of smaller sections to fill in. So that is kind of what we're doing, dividing all of this up into these smaller rectangles, and that should make things a lot easier for us. And yes, even on these large flat areas, we are still going to go all the way up to where the ground goes up again. So even this section right here will all be filled in at this Y level with our dirt. We can always go back and round things off, change it, make it look a little bit more natural. But again, it's just about getting that blank slate, making everything much easier for us to design. And that is all of the dirt that we started with. So we can fly up here. All of those rectangles are just about in place. Again, it's just going to make it a little bit easier to go in and fill in small sections. But we are going to need a lot of dirt because this was about 11 or 12 stacks, and we barely scratched the surface. So at least a couple shulker boxes. I think for that we will probably just fly very far away and find a nice open plains biome that we can place down, or not place down, dig up a bunch of that dirt. So I'm going to take a few empty shulker boxes pretty far away and load all of these up with dirt, and I will see all of you back here probably in a half hour or so, at least for me, a couple seconds for you. Alright, we have returned about half an hour later with 4.5 shulker boxes filled with dirt and grass. We took our shovel all the way down to empty. We could go to the end to repair that, but there's a much easier option for us. We are just going to break our smoker right there. And that pretty much did the entire thing. That was pretty easy. Lots of XP in here from all of our potatoes, although we do need to load some more lava into there to keep those moving. We will get around to that in a little while though. So with all of this grass and dirt, we should have enough now. I would hope we have enough to finish filling all of this in. So I'm going to level off the ground right here, and then we will get to work on mapping out where we want our river to be. So once again, I will see all of you real soon. And we are back with that project all finished up. Honestly, it really doesn't look all that different. I thought it was going to drastically change the landscape, but it looks about the same. It definitely looks more polished, and it is ready for a river and lots of other construction through here, of course, built up around the river. We are going to mark this off with some netherrack, so I'm going to go grab a bit of that, and we will start to shape this river and figure out how we want it to look. Now, the biggest thing with this is making sure that we actually end up with a river and not a stream or a creek. We want a pretty wide river body overall, probably something about like this. That's maybe 15 blocks, give or take, and we're gonna keep it this width pretty much all the way until we start carving out in between a canyon. That is where it will get a little more narrow and a little bit more steep, but for this flat part it is going to be nice and wide and very shallow. We will still have a few turns here and there. It's going to be dynamic, and it's not going to look the same on each side. Some of the shorelines will curve in like this a little bit, and then maybe on that side it will stay straight or maybe curve out. Something, one or the other, but it's just about making it very dynamic looking. And of course, once we get one side, it will make it easier to do the other. The goal is to end up right about here where we have these dips from this hill and that smaller hill on that side. So we are slowly working our way over in that direction. Maybe something like that. So again, we just have this really nice gradual curve to this river. Let's go ahead and do the same thing. I mean, not the same thing, but this same outline with the netherrack here on the other side. Something about like this. And again, we are going to make it a little bit more narrow here as we enter what will be the canyon. And I think for that, we will probably just follow the contours of the land that we have until we get to about right here, where we will start doing the canyon ourselves. And that will leave us with a 6-block wide river that will be some intense rapids. We definitely don't want to swim in that. Technically, we don't want to swim in this either, especially with all of the industrialness that we have happening around it. It would probably not be the cleanest of water, but that gives us a really nice outline. It's actually a bit more symmetrical than I thought. What we may do instead is on this part right here, we will have that go to the inside and remove this row. That way it doesn't look 100% symmetrical. A little bit of symmetry is all right, but I think that's a little bit better. It definitely looks a bit more natural. So we are going to go with that. I'm going to go get some sleep, and then we will mark off the rest of where that canyon will be and get to work carving out this river. So I think the easiest thing for this will be to, I don't know, it might be to start from over here, and it may also be easier to not have some kind of fancy tunnel under this hill, but rather just a pretty steep canyon. I mean, we already have some very intense terrain around here, so I think we can get away with it. Now, this right through here, this will probably get leveled off a little bit. If we drop the river all the way down to here, then by the time we are over to that point, we're going to have a very steep canyon. But for now, we are just going to lay down our netherrack where the river will be. Not necessarily the height of the river, but the path that it is going to take. And again, I think we will follow the natural landscape as much as we can. We will have our canyon end about right here. So that is how that side looks. Again, it just flows with the land, and then we will do the same thing with the other side. And once again, that will pour out about right here, and our waterfall will continue the rest of the way down. So why don't we fly up and get a really good view of this? We'll pause the game from up above, and this might need a little bit of work. I think we may get rid of that small curve out, but I don't know. We might be able to do something cool with that building-wise. But you can see the river gets about twice as narrow as it snakes its way through what will eventually be a canyon. Now, what we may even end up doing is raising this land on this side to be about the same level, but I'm not 100% sure yet. I might like the variation in altitude on one side of the river from the other. But now the hard part begins. That was the easy part, just mapping out the river. Next, we need to actually make it look more natural. Now, obviously, we will eventually fill all of this in with water, and this flat part right here may actually remain pretty flat. But once we get over towards the canyon, that is where things will get really interesting for us. And when I say flat, I mean the water level. Underneath the river, we are going to still have a U shape that the river will follow, as if it was actually eroding away the land as it flows through. But I think we will do water everywhere in between all of this netherrack. So what that means is we need to clear away all of this dirt that we just placed down here where the river is going to be, and then we will replace that underneath with some scaffolding blocks, not actual scaffolding, but blocks that will serve as scaffolding. And it is on top of those blocks that we will place down gravel and clay, maybe some dirt as well, just to really sell that natural look. So I'm going to get to work on removing all of this dirt, probably from this point here. Actually, what we may end up doing is, I don't know if we will keep the weaponsmith here or not, because what I'm thinking we could do is have the dam right here and have something that we could walk across, sort of like a bridge that blocks off the water from flowing through, and then we can walk over it, and then right here we will have the large wall, and that will go all the way down to this level. I think that's what we will do. So let's continue the pattern of the river up past our current smelting building, and of course we want to give a little bit of space. We don't want the land under our smelting factory to erode away. That would not be good, but something about like this, pretty close to it. And then same thing over here on this side, about like that. And then from this point all the way down to the level of the valley down there will all be the same altitude, the same Y level. So we need to remove all of this dirt and all of the dirt in between the netherrack in this flat part. So I'm going to do that real quick. It shouldn't take too long with our shovel, and I will meet all of you back here real soon. All right, all of that dirt has been removed now, and this is what I was talking about over here where we will have our dam. This is going to be the dam itself, which we will be able to walk on top of, and then the water will flow through it from the lake. We will work on that a little bit later, or maybe another time. For now, the main focus is the river right here. It's actually a good thing we didn't fill all of this in, and after filling that level of grass, I think we may actually end up leaving all of this hollow underneath here. But the reason that's good is because we would have had to dig out a lot more dirt anyway, because the river is not just one block deep. It has a variety of depths. So here's the thing, we are building with gravel. Gravel needs a supporting block underneath it, otherwise it will just fall. So we are going to place in our dirt going all the way around, but it needs to be at least 2 blocks below where we want the water line to be, because the gravel will sit on top. So say the netherrack that we have right here is the gravel, well, the water is going to be 1 block below the netherrack. So we will have a layer of water right here, and then we will have a layer of gravel underneath it, just like that, which means our dirt needs to be a 3rd layer underneath that. And this will be for the perimeter and follow along like this, but then it will slowly work its way towards the middle. So we will do something gradual about like this, and then finally have maybe 3 or 4 blocks wide here in the middle, and then it will work its way back up towards the shore, just like that. Once again, gravel right there and water on top of it. So by the time we go and fill all of this in, the river will actually be 1 block shallower than it appears. But we will end up with a shape that looks roughly like this. Again, it's not super deep, but just enough to give it some variation and look like an actual river. Now, we could make it a little bit more deep if we wanted to, but I think for this part right here, that is a pretty good depth. So that is the next step to work on, placing in all of this dirt and filling in all of the gravel. So I'm going to do the dirt right now. We will have a nice path flowing through here, and then we will go back through with the gravel once I have finished all of that. Alright, I think that is a little bit easier now to see the overall shape of how this is going to look. I'm going to go grab some gravel. We have no shortage of it, and we will start to fill in on top of all of the dirt that we have in here. What I think we're going to do once we get closer to the dam is increase the elevation of the river just a little bit. That way it isn't 100% flat moving through here, but this whole section, I think if we kept that flat, it would make it a lot easier for building, and I think it has a nicer look in town. So I'm gonna go grab that gravel and we will get to work on filling all of that in. So again, just on top of all of these dirt blocks, I think we will start from the top layer. I think that will be easiest for us, but we are just filling in all of this gravel. And now you can see why we went 1 layer below with that dirt, because once we remove all of the netherrack, which we will do here once we get all of the gravel into place, when we go to fill in the water, it will be right at the grass level right here. So we are just going to, again, place in all of this gravel, and we will work our way towards the bottom, just like this, and then we will have a 3rd row here at the very bottom, and that will be how our river will look, generally speaking. We may go back later on and add in a few additional blocks, some clay, some andesite, things like that to mix up the pattern, but I think once we get the water in here, it will probably look fine with just the gravel, especially if we plant stuff like kelp or seagrass. But now that you get an idea of how this is all going to work, I'm just going to fill in probably from about right here over to that point, and then we will figure out the canyon. So all of the gravel is now into place. If we want, we can go ahead and remove the netherrack along here, and I think we will do that. That way we can get a pretty good sense of how this actually looks with the natural environment. And I do like that quite a bit. Of course, once we get the water into here, then we will really get a good sense of how this all looks, but we also need to make sure that we are terraforming as we work our way up. Otherwise, we will have water all over the land right through here. But that will look like something like this, and then that will blend with the natural hillside as the river steps up just a few blocks. I still want a pretty decent sized dam for all of that water to flow through. But that is the main stretch of our river. This is the big part that is sort of the highlight of this whole project, and that is pretty much complete. We're going to have a lot of really cool buildings and homes and shops along this river eventually, but for now, it is starting to go in. Also, I did add another layer right through here, as you can see, because we had a pretty large flat bottom on it, so I decided to step that down another layer. But now we are gonna start work on the canyon. So one thing is for sure, the water level is right here where we are standing at that is not what I meant to do. It is at Y82. That is the basically pure fact about this. So the water cannot ever go above Y82 from this point, which means every block at or above Y82 needs to be removed because we are going to have water there in some fashion. Now, of course, it's still going to slope down, so we may have water below Y82, but it can't go back up. Again, rivers can only go down or flow relatively flat. They won't go back up. So all of this dirt from Y82 and above, we are going to remove. I'll go ahead and do that real quick and report back once that is finished. And that is all finished. So we have at least a Y82 level going all the way through here. Some of these areas dip down a little bit, and over here where we talked about maybe doing the tunnel, that is definitely quite steep, but we will terraform around this and make it look a lot more natural. But the episode is getting to be pretty long, so I think we are going to end it right there and make this a two-parter. In the next part, we will be finishing up this canyon section right here and flooding the river with water so that we can call it complete. In the meantime, if you enjoyed today's episode, definitely hit that thumbs up button and make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss out on daily content as soon as I publish it. Check the description for some more important information, links, how to contact me, all of that good stuff. And with all that being said, comment, like, subscribe, remember to stay optimistic, and I will see all of you tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Bye!